Who doesn't like a few super violent beat-em-ups to beat the stress? Well, back in the day, that is how we had things rolling, and the arcades were flooded with some unforgettable classics in this genre. A lot of the credit is due for the companies like Konami and Capcom, who created some of the finest brawlers in gaming history. And some of these games are fun to relive even today. They came in both single-player and multiplayer formats, and the violence often got away with a lot more than games today can. In this video, I will list some of the best and most violent beat-em-ups on arcade, and if you want nostalgia to kick in, stay tuned till the end. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Splatterhouse, 1988. Most people today are probably familiar with the 2010 remake of Splatterhouse, but the OG beat-em-up arcade game was developed and published by Namco back in 1988. The plot of the game centers around two students, Rick and Jennifer, who are caught up in a storm and seek refuge in West Mansion, which is a local landmark known as Splatterhouse. There are rumors about some twisted experiments conducted by Dr. West, who is a renowned and missing parapsychologist. The moment Rick and Jennifer enter the mansion, the door shuts behind them and the nightmarish experience begins. Rick comes under the influence of a mysterious mask and goes on a rampage killing monsters in the mansion, and even Jennifer has a terrible fate. With time, more secrets are revealed about the mansion, and the violent gameplay makes sure that you are glued to the game for the entire time. Much of the marketing strategy for this game relied on the violent nature of the gameplay. The game came with parental advisories on the front of the box, and this actually pushed the sales because everyone loved the forbidden fruit. The graphic violence was inspired by the classic 80s horror films, and while you can blame the lack of variety and simplistic nature, the uniqueness in the violence cannot be questioned. I am a fan of the horror themes and the music, and overall, this is a game worth remembering for sure. Night Slashers, 1993. This game was developed and published by Data East for arcades, and we recently had a modern remake for major gaming platforms. The game is similar in nature to Capcom's Final Fight and Sega's Streets of Rage series. The world is threatened by monsters, mutants, and zombies who intend to transform it into a kingdom for the dead. The task in this game is to conquer these deadly creatures of the night and save the humans as evil King Zarutz and his army of undead attack with absolute ruthlessness. It is always fun to fight through hordes of zombies, werewolves, and other creatures, and this arcade game came as a wonderful guilty pleasure. You could play as one of the three characters, and each character had their special attacks. There is a significant amount of blood and gore, and this game is a unique brawler of its kind. The horror atmosphere is worth experiencing, and for its time, the character models and monster designs are pretty neat. The music and sound effects are quite decent as well, and all in all, this is one arcade game that the old-timers will remember fondly. The Punisher, 1993. I started the video by talking about the incredible contribution of Capcom in the beat-em-up genre, and The Punisher is a great example of their brilliance as the game brings in the popular Marvel anti-hero, The Punisher. The game starts with an intro of how Frank Castle turns into the Punisher, and the gameplay then takes you to the streets of New York and the antics of the violent vigilante. He sometimes gets partnered with Nick Fury, and he pursues the likes of Mafia enforcer Bruno Costa, was involved in the killing of Frank Castle's family. He also takes on known villains like Jigsaw and Kingpin, and the action in this game is one of its kind. The game follows the general formula as we have observed in Capcom's previous games in this genre, and you have access to a wide range of usable weapons. I like the comic-style presentation, which is a fun throwback for the comic book lovers. Back in the day, it quickly became one of the most popular arcade games around, and everyone praised the game for its fun factor. Of course, the bloody and gory side of the game also drew some attention, and even though the graphics and animation were not top-notch, nobody was complaining. Alien vs. Predator, 1994. This is yet another classic developed and released by Capcom for the CPS2 arcade game system, and it is a story that all sci-fi fans are familiar with. The player can take up control of up to 3 from the selection of 4 cyborgs and Predator characters in a fight against the xenomorph hordes, as well as the rogue human soldiers. California has been overrun by the deadly xenomorphs, and you have a cybernetically enhanced Major Dutch Schaefer and Lieutenant Lynn Kurosawa of the US Marine Corps cornered and abandoned. A couple of predators appear and offer an alliance to stop the alien infestation, and that is how it all begins. Not many are aware that this arcade game plot is actually based on an early draft of a script for a film adaptation of the Alien vs. Predator comic book series. It was well received by the gamers and critics alike, and it was described as a game that had everything you would expect from the makers of games like Street Fighter II and The Punisher. The gorgeous graphics and special effects were certainly a major draw, and many call this one of the greatest looking arcade beat-em-ups of all time. Battletoads, Arcade, 1994. The game is also known as Super Battletoads, and it was developed by Rare and published by Electronic Arts. The reboot came many years later in 2020, and for all these years, this remained the last Battletoads game. This coin-operated scrolling beat-em-up featured up to 3 players, and you had to kick and punch your way through the oncoming hordes of enemies across 6 levels. The fight was to save their alternate universe from falling in the grips of the Dark Queen, and the Battletoads, Rash, Zitz, and Pimple all varied in their fighting style. Battletoads took a lot of liberty when it came to the unmatched violence and gore, and it was not destined for a console release. This was also Rare's first game that used the 3D graphics technology, which was later implemented in the 1994 games Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct. I love how each of the levels had a unique theme, and some of the bosses, like General Slaughter, returned from previous games. Also, the humor, combat, and character of this game drew a lot of applause in the gaming community. The level of gore also set it apart from the previous series entries, and it is probably among the more underrated beat-em-ups out there.
Metamorphic Force!
Metamorphic Force, 1993. Metamorphic Force has some historic value among the gamers because it happens to be Konami's last side-scrolling beat-em-up games to appear in arcades. The plot takes you to the year 199X AD, and the evil king, Death Shadow, has awakened from the dead to rule the world one more time. In order to counter him, the Greek goddess Athena has summoned the souls of 4 ancient guardians, and their powers have been bestowed upon 4 heroes to stop the evil forces. The 4 main characters in the game can morph into anthropomorphic beasts by collecting a golden statue power-up. The game mechanics resemble that of Konami's earlier arcade hit X-Men, and it runs on the same hardware as their game Mystic Warriors. There is some difference between the US and Japanese versions, and the latter uses a traditional health bar, while the US version uses a numeric life point counter. I am a huge fan of the Stage 5 boss battle, and every small element about the game has something impressive in store for the gamers. Violent Storm, 1993. Violent Storm from Konami had one of the best storylines in arcade beat-em-up games. The narrative is premised in the year 1990, and World War III has ended at last. The civilization is in shambles, and a lot of rebuilding is to be done with vicious gangs preying on the defenseless citizens and delaying development. Boris, Wade, and Kyle are the brave fighters who serve as the protagonists in this game, and they have run-ins with the corrupt and ruthless gang called the Geld Gang. When a woman named Sheena is kidnapped in front of their eyes, it becomes a mission for them to rescue her from the grips of the gang. You can choose between the 3 characters, and each of them has different fighting styles, speed, and moves. There are 7 stages in the game, and the gameplay cuts a blistering pace, especially when you are playing co-op. The post-nuclear war apocalyptic wasteland setting is near perfect, and I love the ambiance that the gameplay provides. This game is a direct satire of Final Fight, and it even mimics the same set pieces. The real-world feel in the violence is remarkable, and even though there are some shortcomings in the game that make it feel like a rushed effort, I did have a gala time enjoying this arcade classic. Guardians Denjin Makai 2, 1995. We probably know this game as Guardians, even though it was released internationally as Denjin Makai 2. It was a side-scrolling beat-em-up developed by Winkysoft and published by Banpresto, and it was a sequel to the 1994 game Denjin Makai. The titular Guardians could be played by up to 2 players simultaneously. The futuristic setting takes place in the year 2079, and you will enjoy the diversity in the gameplay and the innovation in the storyline. It was a solid game that had a gameplay like a one-on-one fighting game at times. Immediately when you get to the first boss, you will realize that he is something as he turns into the muscular monstrosity that makes for an engaging fight. All the stages of the game are worth your time, and the attention to detail in the background is quite remarkable. On the downside, the map screen feels flawed at times, and some of the bonus stages are quite forgettable. I also like the bright and vibrant colors in the visuals, and this funhouse beat 'em up is definitely right up there among the best in the genre. Vendetta, 1991. Vendetta came from the talented game makers at Konami, and it was a sequel to their earlier game, Crime Fighters. The game was released in Japan as Crime Fighters 2, even though we largely know this as Vendetta. As for the plot, the game takes place in the Dead End City, which is controlled by a firm grip by the Dead End Gang. This ruthless gang with violent criminals has only one obstacle, which is the opposing gang of heroes called the Cobras. They have 5 members: Blood, Hawk, Boomer, Sledge, and Kate. When Kate is kidnapped one day by the Dead End Gang, the Cobras go all out across enemy territory, looking for her. The game was insanely violent for its times, and it also courted some controversies and censorship back in the day. Some offensive and objectionable moments were also censored in the US, but that never affected the success of the game. The atmospheric gameplay had to be admired, and the narrative had both class and imagination. Some of the bosses can be frustrating to fight, but we can take nothing away from Konami for putting together this iconic old-school street brawler. Captain Commando, 1991. I think Captain Commando is among the finest arcade games developed by Capcom, and the story features the titular superhero who was conceived as early as the 1980s. The story is set in a futuristic version of Metro City, and the year is 2026. The world is overrun with crime, and it is up to Captain Commando and his 3 commando buddies to rise up to the occasion. The futuristic criminals are quite a handful, and they are endowed with some secret hidden superpowers. The leader is a tyrannical alien known as Scumicide, and you need to go in with all your skills to get to the end of this challenging gameplay. Captain Commando has a legacy of his own, and the character returned as a player in the fighting game Marvel vs. Capcom in 1998. It quickly became one of the most popular games in Japan, and the US sales were also promising. The fun gameplay, intriguing story, and impressive graphics made this a popular number, and the 9 stages in this game are not too long to tire you out. The final boss fight with Skumacide is memorable, and Capcom, one of the greatest arcade developers ever, proved their skills yet again in this one. Marvelous verdict. They don't make games like these anymore. The era of arcade games is something that the new age comers will never understand because they are spoiled for variety and high-end graphics in the best of gaming platforms. These titles don't necessarily hold good in today's time, but like I said before, I can never rule out the nostalgia factor. Many of these arcade classics were our first games ever, and the fun gameplay or the morbid violence with minimal graphics all reignite some fond memories in us. Do let me know in the comments below what you think of these games, and also tell us about your favorite ones in the list. I would also love to hear some of your other mentions in this genre from the golden era of arcade gaming. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.